It's easy to forget that our significant other was just a total stranger in the beginning. I guess through time and conversations, obstacles you have to face together, even rivalry for that hard-earned love might place a question mark on this person you thought you knew. Through those chosen scenes, it seems we are watching things flourish and then be taken away again, with these four characters confessing more than just their love for each other. Fascinated by the game of love, seduced by the seduction of it, these four play the game of the heart, bursting and breaking at the seams with every deception. And in the end, we question the whole thing. Did anyone really know anyone? How close do you have to be in order to fully realize someone's truth? Let's break it down with each of the main characters, starting with Alice. This is 2 takes, and this is 1 shot. Analysis of Closer. Spoilers ahead. The first words of the film and from Alice are,
"Hello, stranger,"
which I find to be quite fitting when it comes to finding someone whom you love. They begin as a stranger, and after a time, they fall back into the identity. It's no one's fault, it just happens. And here, Alice is a stranger throughout, finding an identity that can help Dan feel at ease. When talking about euphemisms for his obituaries at work, Dan decides the word for Alice is disarming. This is interesting in itself as it's a manner or behaviour with the effect allaying suspicion or hostility through charm. He finds her unthreatening even though he might be wiser to be wary of it. And what's even more fascinating is how Alice disagrees with this. That this is her euphemism, her word. She just is, and Dan thinks she is not. This was our first hint that she is not what we think of her by our first impression. He falls for what she presents. And like him, we fall for it too. At the end of the film, we realise that Alice's real name is actually Jane. The name Alice Ayres comes from Postman's Park, a plaque with the name of a woman that saved 3 children's lives in a fire at the cost of her own life. Are the 3 other characters, Dan, Anna and Larry, like the 3 children that our Alice might have saved? Having these 3 immature characters perhaps being spared from their own lives with these moments of love, if only for a time. They are driven by their impulses, whilst Alice, it seems, is immune from this. Alice appears in these people's lives briefly, and then leaves again back to where she came from, almost like a metaphorical representation of fleeting love. Fleeting in the way it can be, the timeline of events, and how quickly it can go through lack of trust and honesty, a circle of disarming duality. As Reddit user Return of Liveth writes, "Consider her pink wig, her duality, bare yet defensive, vulnerable yet indifferent, naive yet worldly, honest yet clothed in lies. Her mystery, and how she appears and disappears altogether." Alice places her background as fact, and no one questions it. She says her name is Alice, and no one questions that either, and for good reason. Why would you? However, as she works as a stripper with a pink wig, Larry demands to know her real name, wanting her to say Alice when she only replies with Jane, her apparent stage name. But at the end, we realise it was her real name. She hides the truth behind the charade that a stripper can give. Give them enough money, and they can become anyone you want. However, with this character, although a complicated one, there are hints here and there that Alice is the most complete of the 4. She sees through things, like when Larry asks about Dan's book, Alice replies he only wrote a part of her in it, leaving out the truth. Alice personifies the choice of telling people things, whether or not they are lies or the truth. And everyone interprets what she says in their own way, and what's interesting is how she just lets them fester in it, like in the art exhibition.
I'm serious. What do you think?
It's a lie. It's a bunch of sad strangers photographed beautifully, and all the glittering assholes who appreciate art say it's beautiful because that's what they want to see. But the people in the photos are sad and alone, but the pictures make the world seem beautiful. So the exhibition's reassuring, which makes it a lie. And everyone loves a big fat lie.
Alice is presenting what you want to see. That doesn't mean it's the truth. She's the stripper, the loving girlfriend, the cold ex, the pixie dream girl. There are many sides to a person, and I guess Alice, or Jane, is there to remind you of this. Just because you've been with someone intimately doesn't mean you know them.
Lying's the most fun a girl can have without taking her clothes off. But it's better if you do.
Do you think you haven't given us anything of yourselves? Do you think because you don't love us, or desire us, or even like us, you think you've won?
It's not a war.
Larry is, like he's expressed himself, a caveman, the simplistic form of someone driven by their impulses. He represents what we all truly are underneath, and he does and says exactly what he wants, when he wants, with the emotional toll spewing out various nasty things like name-calling to Anna, or even admitting to Dan how he slept with Alice in New York. His admittance to truth is not formed by guilt or sadness, but this hidden trail of fury, with the intention of hurting the other party. He wants his pain to be thrust on others. His impulses present a demonstration also of willpower, like with the smoking, or lack thereof, wherein this grappling with the vice of smoking has Larry saying yes and no like a Ferris wheel, unsure whether to begin again, or quit permanently. This could be seen with his impulses around women, of almost kissing Alice when she said she was a stripper. He is a caveman, led by his dick, let's be honest. And this inclusion of cavemen, and primarily a fish that are set in many scenes in the background, can help manifest the theme of beasts and animals, and how even though we have evolved to what we are now, all in all, we are still beasts at heart. Our own human nature makes us revert back to caveman, and Larry shows us this. But with Larry also is this harsh, brutal honesty, which is somewhat refreshing. For instance, from the interrogation scene of himself and Anna when he tells her of his infidelity in New York, and how Anna instantly forgives him because of her hidden relationship with Dan, it is here that the harshness but also the compassion of the conversation is shown. Larry wants to know all of the sordid sexual details between Anna and Dan, perhaps because he derives some pleasure in Anna's guilt and her awkwardness of telling the truth. But at the same time, whilst knowing he is too good for her, he also wants her to find some solstice in this, to know that she can have happiness with him. She does deserve it, perhaps because he is too good for her. It might all boil down to some selfish intent, but I can see that Larry does love Anna, and underneath it all, Larry is like any one of us. He just wants to be loved. Like any one of us, if we are backed into a corner of loathing the one person we love, we would lash out too. Anna is the cool-headed, self-employed but somewhat unhappy photographer that grasps Dan's attention to new heights. There was no intention to steal Alice's man, no intention to be with Larry until these opportunities were somewhat thrust at her.
I fell in love with her, Alice.
Oh, as if you had no choice. There's a moment, there's always a moment. I can do this, I can give in to this, or I can resist it. And I don't know when your moment was, but I bet you there was one.
Even her work of photographing people who are unhappy is a projection of her own self, a beautiful representation of sadness hidden behind the wall of art. Anna seems to somewhat allow herself to get into situations that have her seem like a co-pilot in her own life, and the fated first kiss with Dan, to which is harboured as a moment that could have been resisted, as said by Alice, could have been avoided altogether. However, the curiosity holds us dear, and the sadness that Alice presents whilst demanding her picture to be taken emphasises the work, the expression, or perhaps what Anna wanted to capture, of heartbreak, something she might not have experienced yet. A feeling, something, even if it's bad, is better than the indifference I somewhat see from Anna at the beginning. And because of this thought, it makes me see her yearning for something, a feeling, whether it's fleeting happiness or the acceptance of sadness afterwards. She is a self-confirming spiral of guilt versus personal yet sporadic happiness. We might even get the impression that she only feels right when she feels unhappy, and it's interesting, as we can understand perhaps all four characters don't really get a happy ending, but this is even more understood with Anna. She wants to be loved, but the irresistible urge to holding on to something familiar, like this sadness and guilt, has her even ready to be hit by Larry, and is actually surprised when he doesn't.
She can be happy. She doesn't want to be happy. Everybody wants to be happy. Depressives don't. They want to be unhappy to confirm they're depressed. If they were happy, they couldn't be depressed anymore. They'd have to go out into the world and live, which can be depressing.
Like the strangers she photographs, she hides herself within a frame, clinging on to the edges of something harsh so she can tell she's still there. It's like pinching yourself, the pain making you realise that you're awake after all. Love doesn't have to be a happy medium for you to feel something. Sometimes love comes within the sadness and the lost separation, like trying to hold someone's hand in a fog. It can be anyone, and for Anna, it happened to be Larry and Dan. It's interesting that Dan's profession is writing obituaries, because in this metaphorical day and age, it does go with his personality of what he's like when it comes to love. Let me explain. As Reddit user Anon Marmont perfectly puts it, Dan is a wandering mind, full of far-off eyes. To me, that's the way we, 99.9%, all are, a form of enlightened hedonism, and always looking for the next thing to make us happy. Always in the pursuit of pleasure, Dan is always trying to write off every experience like a euphemism, trying to find only the good by jumping from one thing to the next. He explains that he wants the truth, otherwise we're simply just animals, but in his pursuit of the truth, he never looks at his own. Wanting to perhaps be the hero in someone else's story, to heighten his involvement in someone's development, he takes it upon himself to exert his presence in moments and conversations where he doesn't have to be. Take the first scene of going to Alice's side when she gets hit by a car. He wants to be that stranger that jumps to your rescue. This can be said for the strange conversation between himself and Larry in Larry's office, firstly apologising for the way he has made Larry suffer, then requesting for Larry to let Anna go so she could be happy with him. Odd requests and words from someone who's wanting someone who doesn't really need them. He writes and summarises people's lives in a series of sentences, and in my perception, he tries to do that with the living too, assuming things, jumping to opportunities, not letting things go, like lurking outside where Anna works, insisting Alice tells the truth about Larry in New York. It's almost like he has written the entire story of his love before it has even happened. He loves Alice, but won't let her love be enough, perhaps because he did a fast forward and wants something new. He's already written her off, assuming he knows everything about her. Dan, all in all, is emotionally immature, loved by an enigma, Alice, but wanting the love of the independent distant Anna like she is the greener hill past the horizon. And I have found Dan to be the character that says I love you the most, to either or both women, whether to them or to others, and because of the consistency of repeatedly saying this, that has deemed those important words worthless. And this is fascinating, because like the audience, right at the end, Alice also brings up the fact by saying,
"No, I'm sorry, you misunderstand. I didn't mean
Yes,
to.
you did.
I love you."
Where?
What?
Show me. Where is this love? I can't see it. I can't touch it. I can't feel it. I can hear it. I can hear some words, but I can't do anything with your easy words.
No one is entirely truthful. Their actions are never entirely selfless, and no one is entirely innocent. We are human, and we falter. As Roger Ebert says, there is no constancy in this crowd. When they're not with the one they love the one they're with. It's a good question actually whether any of them are ever in love at all, although they do a good job of saying they are. There's this impression that there is a lack of understanding for each other and even of themselves, with the deceptions and trust issues becoming unimportant and unfortunately second nature by the time we realise that each scene is a different moment in someone's life. All we seem to see in this film is beginnings and endings. Linear moments are placed with no definite course of time. We do not know if the next scene is set in the past, a few moments from the present, or into the future. And this is fascinating, as this is what we remember from past relationships. We cannot remember everything, only the most important parts, hence why the conversations we do see are presented as opportunities for lies, or hard truths, or the discussion of lying truths. We are seeing fleeting moments, as if the whole film is a memory. And this gives us the question as to whether we really knew these characters that we have been following this whole time. We're only seeing what we can see from their relationships. It's never the whole story. And in a way, this is perhaps a good thing to realize. How long does it take for a stranger to not become one anymore? How close do we have to become to someone to know them completely? Perhaps the whole aim of Closer is to present opportunities and conversations that show that time and truth doesn't bring people closer together after all, and no one is truly going to let you become closer to them until they are ready to. Until then, I guess it can all begin with,
"Hello, stranger."
what are your thoughts on what was discussed in this episode? Comment and let me know to open up a conversation. Like and subscribe for more content of this nature, and come talk to me on Twitter or Instagram. Better yet, support the show on my Patreon to help a creator such as myself with learning on the go. Each like, each comment, each subscriber fuels the motivation I need to make better and better content for yours truly. Come say hi, and thanks for watching.